As the host of Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, I am delighted to be able to bring you this podcast. My name is Wendy Lopez, and I would like to introduce myself to you. I specialize in helping people overcome their emotional blocks through different techniques, through emotional empowerment coaching and compassionate healing light facilitation. As a mom who has experienced narcissistic trauma, I help moms eradicate self doubt in order to regain self confidence to elevate their status both at home and at work. In our podcast, we discuss people's struggles, triumphs, and failures. We dive deeper into self love, self compassion, self acceptance, and mindful, holistic tips. In every episode, I hope that you can take a golden nugget of advice and apply it to the journey of motherhood in order to raise your level of awareness. Welcome to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, where you find healing and creative mental thought advice from experts on past pain, narcissistic experiences, and trauma. Today, I have a special guest, and her name is Candace Sanchez. She's a successful adult who rose from the ashes of a troubled youth. Despite wonderful family elements, there was a dark side to her childhood. Candace now shares her story of transformation, resilience that allowed her to find happiness in her family, career, and most importantly, within herself. Her story proves that your past does not define who you are and who you are destined to become. Candace's testimony is powerful and impactful and will open your eyes to see child abuse with a new lens. I'm so grateful to have you here, Candace, and
Thank-
I'm grateful to share your story and for the audience, moms, to be able to find more about you, what you went through, and how they can work with you or how they can find you. I know we were talking about your book, so that is something that I want you to be able to let them know how they can find you online. But I'm going to go ahead and let you share with us how your story was, what you went through.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you, Wendy, for having me on this amazing podcast. I know what the work that goes into it, so kudos to you for all your work.
Thank
So
you.
Candace Sanchez. So I, so by day I'm a healthcare IT professional, but I wrote a book. I'm an author. I'm a podcast host myself, life coach and motivational speaker. My book I wrote is really it's called Unspoken. And it's one word because the word has a lot of meaning behind it because I wasn't supposed to tell. My book is really my autobiography of the trauma that I suffered as a child. So I will kind of share that story. So between the ages of 5, I was abused by 2 family members. Let's just say that an uncle and then my
Mhm.
stepfather. My uncle abused me when I was the age of 5 until probably about 7. That abuse occurred in my at my grandma's house, my grandma Sanchez's house on Sundays when I would go visit there after church. If the uncle was in, we'd watch television, and so that's where the abuse occurred. As I got a little older, to be 11, I didn't realize what conditioning was happening to me, but it was happening in my home with my stepfather. Just kind of conditioning as when you're abused, they kind of see what they can get away with.
Mhm.
And then it ends up transforming into actual acts. So by the time I was 11, things had started to transpire. And that went on until I was about 15.
Mhm.
And then when I was 15, so again, just going through that trauma and then, not knowing what tools people didn't talk about
Mhm.
abuse, I wasn't educated. I remember being in sex education at school, right? And that I think it was, my abuser's name is Fred. So he basically took me out of that class and him and my mom put me in first aid. So I think that would have been an indication, right, that something might be going on or like, why can't she learn sex ed? But nonetheless, as I was 15, I thought I was pregnant by my abuser. I wanted to commit suicide. I wanted to end my life. And I talk about these traumatic events because it all had effect on my mental being. Um,
Mhm.
and then by the time I was my senior year in high school, so my abuser stopped. He kind of left me alone in my kind of junior, senior year of high school. And then I had met the father of my children. You know, we were kind of like, I say high school sweethearts, so to speak. He went to Horlick. I went to St. Cat's in Racine, Wisconsin. You know, Randy was at Horlick, you know, wrestling guy. You know, I was the happy-go-lucky kind of party girl at St. Cat's. And, you know, and he was Latino, I was Latina. So, you know, it's kind of like, you know, our worlds collided and you know, puppy love really. And so we started hanging out and spending a lot of time together. And I had my own car and you know, then I got pregnant my senior year in high school. I was a senior, Randy was a junior. So we were kids having kids. So when we talk about becoming a mama, usually you want to be equipped with everything you need to be a mama. And I really definitely was not. Um, Not only had I been dealing with the abuse at home, I hadn't disclosed to anyone what was happening at home. And now, you know, Randy and I, you know, we were young. So, you know, he wanted to enjoy his high school years and he was about to break up with me. I was 8 months pregnant. And I remember we were sitting in my car and he wanted to break up with me. And in my mind, all I could think was, oh my God, if he breaks up with me, what's going to happen back at home? Because it had stopped. Is it going to start again? So it was this big eye opener in my heart telling me, like, I need to tell him. I need to tell him. Because if I tell him, he'll take me out of this situation and he'll be my knight in shining armor. And I'll go live with him and live with his parents. And I love his family. And so I had this big unrealistic expectation, if have you will, right? That he was going to be able to do that. That was not the case, right? So I finally told him what happened. And at the time, Randy didn't really know. You know, he reacted in such a way of more, I think he was in shock, but he was victim blaming. I didn't even know what that meant until my adult years, right? Doing all this journey work on understanding my trauma and how it affected me as a parent. But he then victim blamed me and I shut down. I'm like, well, if he's blaming me and blaming me for what had happened, then I can't tell anybody else. So I shut down. So I become a young mom and now I have children. Randy and I, we pretty much had 2 kids by the time I was 19 and he was 18. So now I'm presented with trying to co-parent. Didn't know what that term was either. He wasn't equipped to be a dad. You know, he didn't have a job. He was still in school. So again, it was just really a lot of you know, I say dysfunction, but there was so much going on, and you know, it really kind of set the tone of then I had to go get a job and I got into the workforce and then I had to get health insurance. And thank God I did because I entered healthcare and I was able to go seek mental health services finally. I didn't start addressing my trauma. Um, and I didn't realize the type of impact it was already having on my kids at such a young age. My kids were, you know, 1 and 2, and Randy was very adamant about educating them on their bodies. Don't let that man touch you because unfortunately, some regret that I live with to this day is that he was around my kids. Fred, my abuser, was around my children in their very baby, infant, prime years. And Randy had put his foot down. He's like, this is it. I don't want him around my kids. And so it just kept causing more toxic within our relationship. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him for trying to be the voice, but I wasn't ready to speak my truth at the time. He wanted me to tell everybody. And I didn't even want to tell my mom. I didn't tell my mother until after my second daughter was born. And then once I told my mother, then she had asked Fred to be, you know, he got removed out of the home. Now she might have maintained that relationship with him, but that was so separate from my relationship with Randy. You know, we were really trying to learn how to separate and navigate that. But he was still kind of coming around at family events, birthday parties, you know, baptismal communions. And Randy just he was very upset with me for many years of, you know, I can't believe that you would put our children in harm's way. And you know, here I am, 51 years old, been doing this journey of healing, this you know, work now with my book, being now an advocate not only for myself and but now also for others. I have a personal responsibility to share my story and it's all raw realness and you know, to let others know that they're not alone, that they matter, that you matter, that no matter what you've been through, your past doesn't define who you're meant to be. You know, and I believe in divine design. People come in your path for a reason. And I'm thankful for Randy that he came into my life. I'm thankful that we had children together. You know, he kind of was my guardian angel. He let me see the light. He let me see the light at a point in my time where it needed to be done, but I really didn't live in that light until like 2017 when I saw the hashtag Me Too movement happen. And then I was sitting there going, I have a story. And then that's when the book journey began. And then during those 3 years of writing that book from 2017 to 2020, the pandemic hit. And the reason why I published in 2020 was, again, working in healthcare. I thought that I would die of COVID and never tell my story. So COVID freaked me out, and hearing the deaths and hearing people get sick and hearing how bad it was, and working in healthcare, that's all we did around the clock was talk about the numbers. And I realize now what anxiety was. I realized, I was having pressure in my chest. And I'm like, what is this? I'm such a happy-go-lucky person. Not that I didn't think anxiety but my trauma was starting to bubble up. I had been reliving my youth. I had been rewriting my book. And now I'm afraid of COVID and dying. Everything was hitting me. Everything was coming to the forefront. And so in 2020, when I finally published, during even those 3 years, formed the podcast to allow others to speak their truth. And then just started to life coach people for personal and professional development. But then my niche is coaching other survivors. I'm hearing from a lot of survivors that it's one thing to go to a therapist, which I love therapy. I promote therapy because I've gone to therapy in my 20s and I'm back in therapy again, which is okay because I need to still work on those types of things. The work that I do is heavy, but I need to make sure I'm being mindful and taking care of myself mentally, that I don't carry everyone else's baggage for the work that I do. But yeah, so it's just been an amazing journey. And as a survivor, again, I started to coach other survivors because the therapist brings the clinical lens. I bring more of, you know, your story matters. You need to disclose, you need to speak out, use your voice. There's power in it. What about forgiveness? Why can't you forgive? Because I have forgiven. A lot of people don't understand, but I forgave Thomas and I forgave Fred. Thomas was my uncle that abused me. Fred was my stepdad. Fred actually apologized to me. I remember him. I had a house in Racine, and I owned my own house, and he would do yard work. That's one thing, that he taught me. And let me just kind of back up. There are memories that I have good times with Fred in my childhood, and then there's the memories after I was 11 where it's not good, right? So part of me still had that child where I had that kind of love for him as what a father figure, what I remember the good stuff, and then the bad stuff. And so I feel when I had my house, he would do my yard work for free. And I looked at it as, well, yeah, you owe me. You owe me. So yeah, you cut that grass, kind of that, you're going to do this for free. Like, that attitude, like you owe me. And not that he owed me a damn thing. And Randy say, why are you letting him do your grass? Like, what the hell? You can't do your own grass. Like, it was always this issue. And I'm like, well, he, like he owed, like I was entitled almost to it. And, I remember one time nobody was at home but me, and he knocked on the back door and I got scared. I was like, "Oh my God, why does he want like, what does he want?" I'm like, "What?" I yelled through the window and he was like, "Can I come in?" And I completely reverted back to that inner child, that young girl. And I said, "Yeah, you can come in." And as he came in, I remember walking very quickly to the front door, like standing in the foyer of my front door. And he sat in my living room couch and he was like at an angle. And I could, if I had to leave, I had a front door right there. And he sat down and he apologized to me. He said, Candy, which I still hate that name to this day. Um, he said he was sorry. And at that point, I knew that he knew what he had done and that it was wrong. And I said, I forgive you. And at that point, it was kind of very like empowering for me to get that from him. And not everybody gets that from their,
Right, that's what I was
abuser.
going to mention. Exactly.
But I did, and I've never heard that from Thomas, but I don't need him to say anything. Like, I forgive them both because there's more power in forgiveness for you than for them. If you carry and hold on, you're still going to have that like cloud over you, I feel. And that's just for me, my story, right? And he never, Fred never really, I don't think he's ever apologized to my mom, or I don't think he's ever admitted to my mom. And I don't care. but I know what I heard. And for me, I live with that and I feel good about it. And it is what it is. And, I will say that I still carry his last name. Sanchez was his last name. It is part of who I am. The beautiful thing is after all these years, like I said, I was able to find my biological family. So Fred was my stepdad, not my biological dad. And my book ends on a very amazing way. It's called Full Circle Blessings. I did a DNA test and I found my biological family. And I have 14 brothers and sisters in San Antonio, Texas. And I have a huge family down there. And I met my dad, my real dad, who is Juan Lopez. So I'm truly a Lopez, Wendy.
Oh,
I'm
that's
truly,
amazing.
isn't that cool? I'm truly
Yeah.
Candace Lopez based on my biological, my DNA. And my family's always like, Candace, when you can change your name? And so that's another thing I'm navigating. What does that look like? Is that going to be right for me in the future? And I plan on writing my second book, is going to be called Life After Unspoken, to talk about everything that I've been from the journey of publishing, podcasting, life coaching, speaking, and really being the voice for other women that maybe have experienced something similar to mine, don't know the words to speak about it. I can say that my book Unspoken is a short read. It's a tough read, but it's a short read. It's trigger alerts everywhere. But it has, I know that other survivors have read it and said, wow, Candace, like I finally have some words or context to describe maybe what I was feeling or what I was going through. Yeah. And I can tell you now, my children are adult children. They have children of their own. And so when we talk about this neutralizing the mama, right, and really trying to understand the trauma, I now know the impacts of my trauma and how it affected my children. And now, because I'm a grandmother, I'm able to address that in a different way. And me and my daughters are now having very meaningful, worthwhile, healthy conversations around boundaries. What does that mean for all of us? Having the respect that because they're children, adult children, I'm still going to always be their mom, their parent, but there comes a point where you kind of stop parenting, right? And you just become more of a resource. And I'm still learning that space, right? And I feel like as a parent, as a mother with my daughters, like just understanding their viewpoint and respecting their voice. It took me a long time to get to that point. I'll be honest, because I probably did more for my children than with my children. I did everything instead of sitting down maybe on the floor and playing with them or sitting down. I mean, I know I had them in all types of activities and sports and all that, but while they're doing all that, yes, I'm there. I was there by, but was I really present? I feel like I was, but maybe I missed the boat. And those are some of the conversations that we're starting to have. And it's been very therapeutic. And, it's been an amazing journey. One I would never change. One I can't change because it's brought me to this point in my life.
Right. And speaking about, the two of us, you being a Sanchez and then we're actually Lopez's and um, the Hispanic culture. Can you talk to us about that? I know we talked a little bit about before jumping on the podcast how um, all this information really isn't talked about. So there is no navigation. Where did you
Yeah.
find yourself? Like, when did you come across actually starting therapy? Because it's really, everything is swept underneath the carpet, right? Or they're always trying to, not let everything is secretive,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so being in the Latin culture, how would you say that you were able to accept help to really, because there's this thing where we can't open up.
Right. I remember, so Randy and I was so in love with Randy. We had these kids. I wanted him to be with me, wanted him to marry me, but he held a lot of like resentment, which I understand the resentment and why he had what he had. And I finally said, you know what? I need help. I need therapy. I need to figure out why Randy doesn't want to be with me. That was why I went to therapy. Sat in the therapy sessions, and my therapist, Marianne Jensen, says to me, let's talk, like, why do you feel it's unhealthy? Like she's the one who helped me peel back the layers, helped me to then reflect on my childhood. I finally disclosed to her about my abuse. what had transpired, what occurred. I finally started to cry about it. I started to finally vocalize. She started to give me things in my toolbox like, Candace, you're not mad at Randy. You don't even know what a healthy, loving, trusting relationship is. You don't have anything to base it on. And I was like, oh my God, she's right. And she's like, you need to just heal from the childhood trauma before you can even think about being in a relationship. Like, you have all these expectations of Randy, but you need to fix you first before you can get into any type of like relationship. And you and Randy were kids having kids. Thank God you have a village around you, rallying around you. But again, I never heard us talk about any of that. I mean, I remember stranger danger. Stranger danger, I had people in my house hurting me. There was nobody strangers trying to attack me. It was more
Mhm.
people in my house. And honestly, the statistics say 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 6 boys by the time they're 18 will be sexually assaulted. That's the numbers. That's been the statistic from what I understand, all the research I've done and the people that I've worked with in my community. That's been around for like 50 years. That has not changed. So,
Mhm.
I'm 51. So, back in 1970 when I was born, it was the same then as it is now. And now with
Mhm.
me being one of the many voices speaking out and sharing my story, really, like I
Mhm.
said, my podcast is to help inspire, encourage others to tell theirs, to give them
Mhm.
a safe place for anyone who's had trauma and for us to talk about taboo topics, because this is a taboo topic.
Right.
It really
Exactly.
is. And
Yeah.
honestly, like child abuse, sexual assault, sexual molestation, rape, incest, it basically
Mhm.
has no discrimination. It's in all cultures. From what I
Mhm.
found talking with different, people in the Hmong community, people in the African American community, Latino communities, it's
Mhm.
so like it's there. It's just that we don't talk about it because what happens in this house stays in this house. I remember being told that. And if
Mhm.
you tell, you're gonna be stuck with me anyways. Like I remember Fred telling me, like, if you tell your mom she's gonna have a nervous breakdown, you're gonna be stuck with me anyways. There was so much manipulation and fear and intimidation put upon me. I remember I used to go to the mall and I had a officer friendly used to be at the mall and he would always hand out cards to the kids, kids running around the mall. And
Mhm.
I was one of those girls, always on the weekends trying to get out of the house so nothing would happen to me and be at the mall or be with my friends. And one of the officer friendlies gave me his card. I put it in my coat pocket. I remember going home, hanging up my coat, and Fred obviously must have went through all my things and he found the card, cornered me against the wall, pinned me, and was like, "What is this? Oh, what does he want with you? What do you like him?" Like almost like a jealousy kind
Mm.
of like, I was like,
Mhm.
"What?"
Reaction.
But then I
Yeah.
thought, well, it's a cop. He's scared. Oh, maybe there's something I should do with that. But I never did.
Ah.
He put fear in me, like pinning me and scaring me and like
Mhm.
pinning me to a corner. I was like, oh my God, I can't say anything. Like something will happen. So yeah, like I said, I just think from the Hispanic, my growing up, like it just wasn't talked about. You respect your elders, you give people kisses and hugs, and all of that was just kind of like the expectation. Whereas now, I
Mhm.
think the mindset is you don't have to force your kids to go give anybody a kiss and a hug if they're not comfortable. And don't,
Mhm.
and if they're and I know like a lot of us in his, giving hugs, that's just natural. It's what we were brought up to do, but we need to be more mindful of, what message are we sending? Because what if something is going on? Then
Mhm.
your kids won't want to disclose because then they won't think you're going to believe them. And
Mhm.
that was a lot of things that I felt growing up. And especially because Randy responded the way he did, I just was like, man, if he responded this way, what's everybody else going to think about me? You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
so yeah, so that hopefully that kind of answers that perspective that I have on that. And yeah,
Mm.
so
That's amazing.
yeah.
And after you did your therapy and we talked about you being a grandma, and one of the things that I realized, like with my clients, is doing this type of holistic work, it allows the grandmas to be able to be more present, be more aware, and how to support her grandchildren in a different way than what she was supported. How do
hmm
you see like your journey and your, the therapy that you've had and the work that you do? How do you feel that changes the dynamics for your grandchildren to be able to be in a healthier environment than what you were in and maybe your own children were in?
Yeah. So I will definitely say, like, I got to give kudos to my daughters. Like, everything that they've been through, that we've been through as a family, man, they're rocking it. They're killing it. Like they want structure. No one's perfect. We're perfectly imperfect. I'll give you that, right? But they are taking the experiences from, and not that they say disrespectfully, but Mom, we're going to do things a little different than the way you and Dad did them. Great. Then that means you've learned not to do certain things. You know, and they're both very strong minded women, you know, very intelligent, the way they want things for their families. And so like when I became a grandparent, I think the biggest lesson that I learned was boundaries. We did not learn boundaries. I don't even remember like that word or term coming up in family discussions, but there were boundaries. Like, you know, my kids had to remind me, they're not your kids, Mom. They're our children. They're your grandchildren, because it was hard for me, you know, because I think when I had my girls at a young age, their grandparents, you know, helped to raise them. Those grandparents became more like the parent figures in their lives. So I think I had the mindset of, oh, well, it's going to be the same way it was. Like, I'm going to help to raise them because that's what I did with my girls. No, they were like, we're going to raise our children. You are a grandma, you know, and I had to really understand and respect that boundary. So that's one thing that I will. And the beautiful thing is my girls acknowledge, Mom, you're a way better grandparent than a parent. But I love you. I love you. But it's because I'm taking that time to be present. I'm taking time to schedule to be with them. I'm, you know, the holidays, it's all about the kids and, you know, making sure they're happy. And so my oldest grandson is 13. My other grandson is 7. And then I have 2 new little granddaughters that were just born. One is 10 months and one is 8 months. And so I can say like the relationship and love that I feel towards them, there's just no feeling like you know you love your kids, but it's just something about those grandkids that they just melt your heart away. And I can say, you know, when my daughters both had 2 girls, it really kind of reverted me back. It brought back my trauma again, because I remember my girls being that little and feeling bad that Fred was around them, because I probably I did. I put them in harm's way. Who knows what could have happened, or if something did happen that I'm totally unaware of, right? And so it breaks my heart, but it helped me to kind of have a conversation with my oldest daughter about that. She had asked me a question recently. She asked me a question, Mom, do you remember us being that small? And I said, yeah, but I didn't go into any detail. And then it wasn't the right moment. And then another opportunity arose. And I said, remember when you asked me that question? And I said, well, I just have to let you know that it hurts so much to think about it, because I know that I put you in harm's way. And I finally acknowledged what I did as a parent. And she was like, but Mom, why didn't you know? Mom, I don't understand. And I said, well, honestly, Adriana, you know, it's my oldest daughter's name. She basically I told her, I think it's because the way your dad reacted towards me when I did tell, I just didn't want to tell anybody else. So I didn't know how to get out of the situation. And so again, even through all this, you know, at my age, I'm still healing. I'm still having those good conversations, healing conversations, and it just is really enhancing our relationship. My youngest daughter, her and I, you know, we talk very candidly, very openly. And if, you know, I always tease her, when am I going to, you know, have Lucia over and spend the night? She's like, Mother, slow your roll, Mother. But you know, again, it's just, I just long for when I get to have all my grandkids come over and have a sleepover, and it might be a few years, and I'm patient. I now have learned even patience through this journey. So
Yeah, that is true.
patience is key, and just being really respectful of what their wishes are and how they want to parent, and knowing that it may not be the way I would do it, or it may not be the way I've done it. But then again, I wasn't perfect either. And there was a lot of, you know, toxic behaviors that they saw. And I'm just glad that they're addressing even that. You know, they're having honest conversations. You know, Kyron's now a teenager, my 13-year-old grandson, and Adriana's, you know, talking to him about, you know, friends and dating and girls and life changes. And I'm just so grateful that she's having those conversations. He trusts her enough to have those conversations. You know, the other day we were driving and I could tell something was bothering him, and I wanted to be the one he was talking to. And he's like, Grandma, I'm talking to Mom. I'm like, all right, grandson, enough said, you know, but it was just the fact that he was like, me and my mom are talking about it, and I'm not trying to be mean, Grandma, but Mom's got it. And it just made me feel good. It just made me feel good, like he's having the conversations with the person he should be having it with. And for me, I'm like,
Right.
that's amazing. That's neutralizing that mama trauma. Like, my daughter is the one he should be going to, and they have an open talking relationship. They're disclosing things that they need to discuss. And he's just letting me know, no, grandma, it's all good. Like, it just made me feel really, really good. So yeah.
Yes. And I love that, right? So in your work and what you have done, you have actually neutralized the mama trauma,
I hope. I keep
allowing,
praying. Yes.
right? Yeah, it's been in steps. I'm
In
sure it's
steps.
not the whole life yet, but it's been in steps. But what you can see with your own eyes, and you're the witness that you've neutralized it, where now your daughter and son can actually have that bonding conversation. They can talk it out without, grandma coming in and trying to take over, because normally the taking over is because of fear that it can happen. But
Mhm,
as you said, your daughter, you have done such a great job in however it manifested as a parent,
mhm,
right? Like you
mhm,
said, we are perfectly imperfect in every single way. But the point is that you were able to take your, pain,
mhm,
your trauma, heal whatever parts, components of yourself and your psyche and your body and your feeling, and be able to provide a space where your daughter feels comfortable of not having to run to you,
mhm,
but being able to take a, autonomous, have that as a parent, and
mhm.
then her child to feel the same way. That's like liberation.
Yes, yes. And I will say, in all honesty, I was probably that grandma that would come in, give her opinion, give, and
Right.
then that caused problems between me and my daughters,
Yes.
or, why don't tell me this? And, and then that whole pointing of fingers and the blame game, and, well, you did this and I did that, so that wasn't healthy. But now it's basically having better conversations, right?
Hmm.
Being able to speak in tones that aren't yelling and swearing, all of the unhealthy traits, right? Where it's
Hmm.
more of asking questions and
Yeah.
asking for clarity, and then kind of understanding the perspective, and then saying, okay, I get what that means. And just so much better than what it was. And I can tell you, it has been worth it. All of the lessons learned through this journey has really been worth it. And I think
Mm.
because I keep learning, because of advocacy work and talking with other survivors, and,
Right.
not just women survivors, but male survivors, and getting that aspect, but again, how they're connected, how they're tied. So
Mm.
yeah, so it's been eye-opening, lessons
Hmm.
learned. And I'm just so grateful to be able to share my story here, Wendy, with you. Thank you so much.
Yes,
This is amazing.
absolutely. Yes, and I'm so grateful, as again, we get to witness, you wrote your book, but we get to witness the actual name of this podcast, of neutralizing the mama trauma, so we can move beyond the trauma, become successful ourselves, allow
Mhm,
our children to expand and grow, and then for them to parent their children into a healthier generation. That's what this is all
mhm.
about. This
Yes,
is, we're doing this work to be, breaking the cycle. We're the cycle interrupters,
yes, yes,
right? We had to
right.
go through what we had to go through, but we didn't stay there. We didn't stay in that victim. And then
Mhm,
it shifted into surviving, because surviving is that, control, the kind of like manipulation where, so it doesn't happen to my children. But then we move on to Thriver, where here we are. You
Thriving,
have your
yes,
podcast, I have my podcast. That's thriving. That's thriving in your true light,
yes, yes,
right? And so this
yes.
is the hope. And this is, something that I like for the podcast, to be able to give back. Because when we find ourselves in our own trauma, in our own abuse, we really can't think.
Mhm.
And we can't even imagine beyond. But this is an opportunity for moms to see there is so much more than what I'm going through right now.
Yep.
There is so much more to discover out of life
Mhm.
as a mother.
Yes.
There's so much growth in motherhood, but we get stuck in through society, having that, the dredge of, the pain and being a mother is so like inner conflict with yourselves because you have, as far as us, we have like culture, right? The
Mm-hmm.
Hispanic culture, the way they parent. We
Mm-hmm.
have society.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own selves.
Yeah.
That's a lot for a mother to take in. And then is she do, right, then you start to question, am I good enough as a parent? Am I doing this right? How
Right.
are they gonna, be when it's because it's a product of you? How are they gonna be when they're grown up and they have their own kids?
Right.
So it creates a lot of stress within, and people don't talk about that either,
Right. I know
right?
a question that I get asked too is like, well, how do I feel towards my mother? Like based on this happening
Yes,
with
right.
the father, with her husband, Fred. And I remember the day that the book was published and it was available like on Amazon and my website at the same time, right? I remember like I felt like white as a ghost. I was like, oh my God, like my life is literally an open book. Like that just
Mm,
anxiety and like, oh my God, nervous knots and everything. It's like this is happening. And I remember getting up from my office desk, my chair, going to my mom's room because she's retired. She lives with me here at my house in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And she looks at me, she's like, what's wrong? What's wrong, Michal? What's wrong? And I'm like, nothing, Mom. And she's like, and I said, my book is published. My book is out there. Like people are gonna be able to get it now. And she's like, really? And the whole time I know it's bothering her and it's hurting her on the inside. She's not talking about it. And I said to her, I said, Mom, I gave her a big hug and I said, I love you. And I just want you to know that I don't blame you, that I forgive you when there's really, I don't feel anything to forgive. I said, I just want you to know, like, I don't hold you responsible and that this does not define our relationship. Like, I love you. You have been there for me through thick and thin. You've been my financial supporter. You've been my emotional person. You've been there, Mom.
mm,
You brought me in this world and I love you dearly. And it was like at that moment where I just didn't want her to feel a certain way. And I know it's still hard for her. Even when I'm sitting here doing podcasting, like, can she hear me? She's upstairs. It's like, am I whispering? But it's just like I just need her to know like this is not, I don't blame her. I love her and I care about her. And I even write
mhm,
in my dedication of my book, some information
mm,
about her and how I don't want people to attack my mom and go at her. And if you have questions, come to me, talk to me about it. So,
mm,
right there, I feel I tried to do that healing with my mom because I don't want her to ever take that to the grave or feel a
mm,
certain way when it's her time, right? I want her to not carry that with her, carry that burden. It's not for her to carry. And if I
mm,
forgave, for me, that's good enough. And I don't need to know,
mhm,
what her feelings are. And if she wants to share them, great, I'll listen. But my mom's been very non-confrontational, very doesn't like to disclose and talk.
mm,
And so I just be respectful of that. So yeah, I just wanted to
mm,
make sure I shared that little bit if anyone was maybe thinking about what's her relationship with her mom. And, she is involved in my life.
mm,
And even being a great grandmother, she does a lot for her great grandson. So they're my grandsons, but they're her
mm.
great grandsons. So you have those 4 generations of
That's amazing.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Really, really cool.
Yes, I love that. So, can you share with us before we close any practical tips that moms can apply in their life if they're going through a situation similar to some type of trauma or abuse? But I know we can get stuck in not being able to break through our mindset. Is there something that they can do on a daily basis that maybe you did for yourself?
Yeah. So, I highly recommend. So, like, and I still fight depression. I do. There's moments
Hmm.
where I just don't want to get out of bed or I'm too tired, fatigued, right?
Hmm.
I what I turn to and what is my jam is I turn on music immediately. I'm a music girl. I
Hmm.
love music. Music does something to my soul, and I will put
Okay.
on music. If music, isn't your thing, the other thing I turn to is devotionals or prayer, meditation. Like I'm an advocate of just
Hmm.
centering yourself, putting your mind right. I get a massage once a month. Take care of yourself, treat yourself. Self care is so critical because if you don't take care of you, you cannot take care of anyone else. Family, friends, anything, your partners, whatever, you need to take care of you. So I recommend massage. I recommend even Reiki sessions. So
Mm.
I've done all of those components
Oh,
and
good.
those things, Reiki, sound therapy, sound baths, like just those have really helped me to not carry everything, because I love to carry and try to fix everything. And I've learned to just
Mm,
kind of release and let it go. And yeah, and I just, for me, because I am rooted in my faith, I just give, whatever you believe in, the creator, the higher power, the
mhm,
universe, law of attraction, like, God, the Holy
mhm,
One, whatever you want to
mhm,
believe in,
mhm,
like that's who, I mean, I think because I was rooted in that foundation, I know like all of my ancestors, people that have passed on, are all guiding me and protecting me and are,
mhm,
are in my spirit, and I know that
mhm,
they're proud of me, and I feel it. I feel it every day,
mhm,
and that I can
mhm,
really live in my true light and be a light, hopefully, for others. So I always tell people, I'm sending you light and love in any of your
mhm,
darkest times. That tomorrow is a new day. Tomorrow will be a better day. So yeah, so those are some of the things. And the last thing I'll say is every day has, for me, like spiritual Sunday, motivational Monday, terrific Tuesday, wonderful winning Wednesday,
mhm,
thankful Thursday, fantastic, fabulous Friday, and then just super Saturday, right? Or self-care
mhm,
Saturday. So I usually right away off the bat know that that day is going to have a good day. I started off with a positive, like
mhm.
what that day is, and that for the most part instantly puts me in a better mood.
I
Yeah, so those
love
are,
that. So moms, you can have theme days, right?
yes, theme days. Yes.
Right, theme days. Yeah. So and that automatically shifts from wherever you're at. Or from the theme day, give yourself 30 minutes, 10 minutes to have, that self-care Saturday. What are you gonna do? Um,
Mhm.
that's awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, how can our
Absolutely.
audience find your book? How can they find you online? Can you tell us about
Yes.
that?
Absolutely. So you can find me at my website. So my website is www.candace, Candace, Sanchez, Sanchez.com. My website has where you can buy the book from my swag store. So I have my own shop on my
Mm,
website.
mm,
My podcast is available through my website. So if you click on the podcast page, and so, yeah, or you can even buy it on Amazon. So if you love your Amazon stores and you
mhm,
want to put in your shopping
mhm,
cart, please do so. My podcast is available pretty much on all streamings, spaces, whatever your listening pleasures are. And I am promoting my season 3. I just dropped season 3 this
mm.
month, which is dedicated to all male survivors. So being as a woman survivor, I
Oh,
now have a
wow.
space for the male survivors. And I know this is about mama trauma, but just giving the men
Mhm,
a platform as well.
mhm.
And I wanted to partner and collaborate to give them voice. So yeah, so I'm just very thankful. And if you're looking for a coach, in any type of professional personal development, or if you might be a survivor and want to change your mentality from victim to survivor to thriver, that is my niche. So I'd love to work with you. And then if I'm going to hopefully be at the summit that Wendy's going to have, and I'll put in my application to be a speaker, but love to have some more conversations with any of the mamas
Absolutely.
listening, and just want to stay
Mhm.
plugged in. Wendy, you're doing great, amazing work. It's an honor and pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much for having me. This is amazing. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. Yes, feeling is mutual, and I'm so grateful that we have met. And like you said, I love what you say, design,
Divine
what is
design. Yep,
divine
divine design.
design,
2 words that
right?
I live by.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
divine design. And I feel this is part of it because this fires me up, and this is my work too. And I started everything with the intention from the Soul Mama Summit. So I'm glad to have you part of that. So
Yes,
we'll be knowing and looking forward to you in September of 2023, and more collaborations to come. I would really love that as well. So I'm
absolutely.
hoping that the audience is able to connect with you, learn from you first, read your book, and knowing that there is a way out. We are our own gateway.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Thank you
Absolutely.
so much, Candace. We'll
Thank you,
see you
Wendy.
soon.
See you soon.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast. If you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss any new episodes. It would also mean the world to me if you're able to take a moment and rate and review my podcast on how it was helpful to you. Also, please connect with me on my social media platforms. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next episode.